something of a cliche that the weather in England is gloomy and gray most of the time, so to show up at a wet and dreary Silverstone seems rather fitting. Put your wellies on. It's time to hunker down for the PCA Sim Racing Series 13 Club Class. You'll see it all live here on RaceSpotTV. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth tonight is Roush Racing driver Joey Atterbury. Behind the scenes is our director Ramiro Cisneros. We're thrilled to have Princess Cruises as the 2025 PCA title sponsor. As the official cruise vacation partner of Series 13, they provide exclusive offers, including world-leading itineraries across a fleet of 16 elegant ships sailing to more than 330 global destinations. Reach out to the PCA concierge team to book your next adventure today by calling 833-679-2188. PCA is also proud to announce they're celebrating their 70th anniversary in 2025. Here's to many more decades with North America's largest Porsche enthusiast group. Well, we are now well into the season here, Joey, as we take a look at the schedule, but a bit of a break from some of the previous tracks we've been on.
Yeah, just past halfway here, and like you said, went already to Daytona Road Course, Portimao for round number 2. We were just at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, better known as Mosport, a couple weeks ago, and here we are across the pond at Silverstone, the GP layout. Still got Road America, Hungaroring, and another European stretch there to end it with the Imola Grand Prix racetrack down there in April, Joe.
Should be fun to wrap things up on as we take a look at the championship. Andy Jenks currently leads, but he wasn't here last week, so zero is going to have to be one of his drops. Should be interesting to see if he can continue to hold on to that top spot since he had back-to-back wins. Well, that means that he has easily got a perfect score right now. Velez chasing him with an 80-point marker to go. Clearly, the rest of the field has a lot of work behind them, but since we're halfway through the season, should be possible to try and catch them up, as it does remain tight a little bit farther down. If you look at 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th, where only 20 points separate those few positions. Now, if we take a look at the clean drivers, Joey, that also is still pretty close up top.
Right now, it's Kenneth Eskridge tied with Chris Sherburne. Both of them have 0 incident points throughout this entire thing. Pretty incredible, but I'm also looking at everybody, I would say, up to 5 incidents. That includes Julian Velez, Dale Green, Charlie Boyer, Mike Matson, Ben Leung, John Gibson, even Patrick Adamczyk, Derek Dirksen, all are there in the top 10. It's pretty incredible to limit your incident points. Remember, that's not just contact, but going off of that racing surface as well.
As for Silverstone itself, as you can see, we've got 18 turns to try and deal with, over 3.6 miles. That's nearly 6 kilometers. So this is quite a long track. And with it raining, that means that you're looking at 2+ minute lap times for these cars. So some of them might not be able to complete qualifying. In fact, that was a bit of a story yesterday that some drivers were only able to get 2 of the 3 laps in, Joey.
It's, it is what it is, especially with the rain that you see here. It's going to be a very wet Silverstone experience, kind of true to real world, kind of what you'd expect over there. But guess what? Everybody's in the same boat, so you might as well get the oar out and start rowing.
Hopefully it won't be that rainy that they'll need to do that. In fact, it is planned to be light, all 4 races that we've got here for the PCA at Silverstone these 2 weeks. So it won't be too bad, but it will be slippery, and we saw a number of mistakes in last night's race in the pros. So what are the club drivers looking like? As they're the slightly slower drivers, but there's still plenty of skill out here, so I'm anticipating some good racing as we watch Cottle bring it around. Only 23rd right now, which is second to last of those who have set a time, so he's definitely going to have to find something here in these last 2 laps.
This weather and this racetrack with these cars is definitely going to be challenging. I think that Silverstone naturally is a little bit more of a technical racetrack that's medium to high speed. That's why it suits the open wheelers so well. But having the rain on the surface and these slower corners in certain sectors of this racetrack, these drivers are going to have to be on their toes all night long.
Almost to the end of the lap here for Neville as he comes out of the Maggots-Beckett sequence and onto the hanger straight. And I'm showing him is improving, it looks like, on his latest lap. And that might get him a position or 2, but not much more than that. If he can hold on to this all the way to the end. Here's one of the few places where you've got elevation as well, Joey, coming over Stowe.
This is through turn 15 and then come up to what is kind of this final chicane complex. Make sure you get your brake marker right, but remember, it's raining. It is that static weather, so it's going to stay similar throughout this entire time, but you can always try to push it that little bit deeper, try to get that little bit more for every lap in qualifying.
It's like a slight improvement from Neville up to a 2:14. And yes, it looks like he should have enough time to come around for one more lap. We're looking at about 2:13 for the absolute quickest out here, which is Derek Dirksen right now. And Derek is on his final flyer. Peter Krumer, meanwhile, down in 23rd, stays there as he does not go faster. But all 25 drivers do have at least one representative lap down at this stage. So that's a good sign as we now check in with Rex Gerald-Waller.
Crucially, you see the timer on top of the board, 2:19, 2:18. These cars are doing about 2:13, 2:14. So right about now, if you've been able to cross that start-finish line, you'll be able to get that lap in. But anything after this, you're seeing a checkered flag already.
Looks like J.R. Gregory might be the one that's closest on this one. I can see him last among the drivers that have crossed the line. There was someone coming out of pit lane, but obviously, they're not going to have that lap counted regardless, as Rex is not going to have one last go at it. He has a spin, so this lap is ruined no matter what. I guess from here, it's just practice for him. Let's check in with McKinney up in 6th.
Going through a very fast section of the racetrack, this Maggots-Beckett's Chapel complex. It's always so fun to watch the car attitude, and even in this wet weather, mixed condition, you see these Porsches definitely working and have the body roll going with all the suspension parts moving around, getting these awesome in-car shots, in-sim shots, if you will. A lot of these setups definitely make me jealous over here. That's an awesome triple setup he's got.
Yeah, some of these drivers have just incredible rigs that are very much jealousy worthy. We watch McKinney come down into the last chicane. I'm showing him slow on this lap, so I don't think, in fact, he's going to bring it down into pit lane. Terrence Tong is the one I want to keep an eye on because he was in third. He just got bumped down to 4th, but he was looking at maybe a front row start. If this last one is good enough, 2:13.5. Yes, it is. On to the top row for Terrence Tong, the 388 car.
Yeah, as you were calling that out, I think John Gibson was able to kind of slide up inside the top 5 and then immediately get bumped back down to 7th. 30 seconds remaining, so as long as you're on this lap and can complete it, hopefully you can get to that start-finish line in the next 25 seconds. We'll see what the 218 car can do here as he crosses the start-finish line. Looks like it's going to be a 2:15.492, does improve up to 21st.
Yeah, definitely a lot of shuffling there at the back of the field. Clearly some drivers still finding quite a bit out there. They have had plenty of time to practice on this wet track, so it's not like they're just discovering it, but still could be a matter of trying to execute as there goes the last of our time. And just a couple drivers look like they were shy of those 3 laps. Otherwise, at least we got all 25 with a time on the board. So as we watch the rain continue to come down here, it's going to be heading off to the warm-up soon. First, though, we're going to go through our starting results. Derek Dirksen on the pole position, flanked by Terrence Tong. Just to his outside, Michael Schultz is going to be starting in P3, with Mark Foley in the 4th position. Julian Velez in P5 is going to be flanked by Ben Leung in 6. Then on the next slide, you'll see John Gibson starting 7th and Peter Sigourney to his outside at 8th. Michael McKinney, good enough for 9th. Rex Gerald-Waller, with only his 2 laps, good enough for a top 10. Richard Woodruff will be 11th, and then David Glenn rounds out your first 12.
Across the page is going to be Sylvester Canny in that number 13, starting from 13th position. Robert Neville next to him, starting 14th, with Patrick Adamczyk in 15th. Scott Bowers 16th. Mike Matson's going to be starting from 17th place position. Steve Komatz back here in 18th. Dale Green in the number 250, rolling off in 19th spot. Ken Eskridge in 20th, with J.R. Gregory back here in 21st. David Stelling rolling off 22nd. Robert Cottle in 23rd. And Peter Coomer in 24th. And actually one more car here, Chris Sherburne in 25th.
and actually had no practice laps in here, so he was definitely on the back foot. I assume we're going to be taking a look at that pole lap in just a bit here, but this is an above view of what this track will look like on an old airfield. And yeah, here we go. Joey, you want to talk us around what it's like to be fast in the wet?
If I can do that, yeah, certainly. Let's leave it in the hands of Derek Dirksen, our pole sitter here in this number 505. You can see fourth gear through that incredibly fast turn one complex and actually accelerating through turn two. Now is when things really start to slow down, and you got to balance the car between the front end and the back end. Remember, it's not just those brake inputs, but rolling on the throttle, making sure that you don't let that back end wag too much. Now you accelerate up through turn number 5. Hang on to it there as you got a lot of lateral G, and then you kind of have a little bit of a breather. Get your eyes forward to this brake marker. Don't overshoot the brakes and really roll the speed into what is turn number 6, Brooklands complex. And then up here, you got turn number 7, Luffield. It's so important. Look at how long this corner is as it bends around to the right. The sooner you can get on the gas, the better off you're going to be down this what is old front straightaway, leading into what is turn number 9, one of the fastest corners in all of motorsports. This is such a cool corner to really watch the cars. So high speed, using all of that aero grip, and even in the wet, definitely very, very high speed up in probably 4th and 5th gear, and now enters the Maggots Beckett's Chapel complex. You have to be a step ahead here, because if you're on the back foot, you're going to be losing time through each one of these apexes. Get the car hustled over to driver's right and then really stand on the gas right here. Let the car accelerate out onto this hanger straight. And this is another area that the driver can maybe take a sigh, take a breath, but you got to look towards this brake marker right here for Stowe, turn number 15. Roll the speed in here. You'll see a lot of cars with a wide entry try to capitalize on this exit, and once again focus on the brake marker. This is that final chicane. Really slow going in on these first 2 apexes here. Keep it off of those red box curbs, those giant red curbs. The sooner you're on the gas right here, the more you can tuck that nose right into that final corner, club corner, turn 18. And that's a lap from your pole sitter in the 505, Derek Dirksen.
It's going to give him that top spot. And from what we saw yesterday, passing can be a little bit tricky in these wet conditions. So track position going to be so important for him at the start of this race. Getting a good shot off the line on the rolling start, no doubt, which is the other thing that kind of shaped a lot of yesterday's race. There was a big accident, a couple accidents really, through the first couple quick corners. Hopefully everybody watched that and really took note on what to avoid this time out.
Whenever it's raining, Joe, you just have to kind of hope for the best. You never know how everybody else is going to drive. This warm-up session is kind of a nice jump in the pool, if you will, because you can kind of feel how others are attacking this racetrack. So not going to be completely unfamiliar territory, but whenever it's mixed weather, it's going to be a little bit iffy.
No doubt. And this is the first wet race of Series 13 as well. They've had them last season, so they have had experience. A lot of these drivers have probably done this before, but they may not have been on it for a while. So it's going to be a bit of a refresher what it's like trying to dice through the rain and through the puddles here at Silverstone, as it looks like the cars are now starting to grid up. It's going to be, thankfully, a very short pace lap, so we don't have to wait for them to go the full 3.5 miles around here. They'll line up just before Stowe Corner.
What is the thing that I'm actually kind of relieved about is, remember, these are the GT3 machines, so they've got ABS incorporated into them. So thankfully we won't have any big blown brake lockups or anything of the sort, but I think I'm mainly looking towards turn 3, turn 4 here on this opening lap. If there's going to be any sort of kerfuffles, I think it's going to happen down there.
Yeah, most likely. We did see a few drivers get tangled with one another. Of course, as I mentioned, we had a number of spins and cars getting caught out through Abbey and Farm as well, but hopefully slightly fewer cars what we've got here than we had last night. Maybe that'll help them out a bit, as the pace car going to lead them off with Derek Dirksen up at the front, and Terrence Tong next to him, trying to see what he can get out of this one. No Andy Jenks once again, unfortunately. It looks like he will be off of that top spot after tonight, and really missing 2 races kind of does his championship in. Instead, Julian Velez is sitting ready to try and pick up on that top spot as he comes in 5th on the grid, but 2nd in the championship. There we go. Pace car is in, but it's a long wait before they get around to the exit of Club Corner. So will the club class be able to give us a clean start here on the short blast down the Hamilton straight? They wait for the call as they come off that final right-hander. The car is trying to stay nice and tidy here as the spray is going to suddenly become immense, and the green flag is out. Watch for the cars being a bit blind towards the back of the field as a big shove from Schultz on Dirksen coming down into the first corner, just trying to give him that little bit extra speed. Tong going to fight him around the outside of what will be turn 3. Who's going to come out ahead? It looks like Dirksen, at least momentarily.
Terrence Tong, though, is driving it up along the left side, and now we've got 1 car off the racetrack. Can he squeeze it in? There's Dirksen a little bit wide, actually off into the grass. Up to the front is Terrence Tong.
I think that was Mark Foley we saw going off, using some of that paved runoff to his advantage. A little bit of a cleaner start than what we saw yesterday, so that's a good sign as now they hit the Wellington straight. Tong to the top spot over Dirksen. Will that be a decisive move here at the start of this race?
You can see how busy it is. Call it from 5th place on back. You get all of that spray that you were talking about. Visibility certainly at a premium, and all you're trying to do is race this racetrack, and it's so tough to see.
Still so far so good. We're on to the old pit straight, coming up to Copse Corner. Dirksen's not letting him go. In fact, he's sending it in deep into the former first corner, but it looks like that hurt him on the way out. Now Michael Schultz has a chance to try and get aggressive. Question is, does he want to do that here on lap 1? The answer is no. He's going to stay in 3rd.
To your point, I think that Terrence Tong was maybe tiptoeing it through what that fast Copse Corner was, and Dirksen was just going in with his hair on fire, maybe a little bit more confident, but there's Dirksen actually slipping up on one of these crucial corners, leading out onto the hangar straight. It's Michael Schultz in the white and red car that's got the run. It's going to go off to driver's right. He's already at the rear axle. He's going to have to take it in really deep here into Stowe. Looks like he's going to be up alongside to the door.
Wheel to wheel, coming over the crest. It's a little downhill run into Vale. The inside's going to go to Dirksen, but that doesn't mean he's going to be able to hold on to it. Schultz could try and cut back underneath. No, he does not. Dirksen will defend, but the more they do this, the more Terrence Tong can start to creep away.
That was a really good defense by Dirksen. I thought for sure once Schultz was up the inside of turn number 15, he was going to be able to get that pass done, and looks like we're going to get a little bit of some action back here with the number 210 of Steve Komatz. Looks like he got spun off to the right side early on.
I think there may have been just the tiniest bit of contact in that one. I haven't seen any penalties or investigations yet on that as we now settle into lap 2, coming through the loop. Tong leading Dirksen, leading Schultz. No wonder Schultz is willing to get a little bit with his foot in the door here, because he is a former pro motorcycle racer, so he's willing to do some dangerous things.
He got a little bit wide there through what is kind of the turn 4 complex, and looks like this is going to be another issue on the racetrack. This was the number 15 car of Mike Matson, definitely getting turned going into, I believe it was turn 11 or maybe turn 12 on the opening lap, and then also Robert Neville is on the opening lap going into that first chicane, just a little bit deep on the brakes and spins himself out.
Well, he has to be so patient too. He does a good job waiting for a clearing to get going, but that cost him a lot of positions. Now, for those that did get damaged with their incidents, the good news is they do have a spare car if they need it, but our scheduled pit stop, the window has not opened for that yet, so they're going to have to gut through that damage if the car can carry on.
This is a cool view to show you how minimum that visibility is. And remember, this camera's on the roof where the drivers are inside the car is even worse. And you can certainly see the car in front of you, but anything past that in the slipstream is just that gray rain haze. Mark Foley doing a nice job. You see him kind of ducking out, trying to find that brake marker, see through that rain, and just try to optimize his own racing line.
That was Velez in front of him in that yellow machine. As we've had a problem with Rex Girawala. I thought I saw him losing a few spots. Oh, yeah, you don't want to be touching certain curbs in the wet, and I think he found out the hard way.
That's definitely a tough one. I think that was coming out of Stowe there, which is incredibly high speed. And yeah, to your point, Joe, you touch some of those curbs at those speeds and you're in for a ride.
Fortunately, that ride was right into the wall, so he'll have to deal with that damage. Oh, look at this. Schultz once again on the attack. Dirksen, he's been on the rear guard for the early stages of this race. He holds the inside to force Schultz to have to go the long way around, but Schultz is still going to keep him pinched down to the apex. Julian Velez probably watching this thinking, I could have a shot here soon.
Definitely defensive from Dirksen there in that opening set of corners, but really he nails that slow speed section, kind of like an autocross. The shortest distance is definitely the fastest way through, at least that I see with this weather. If you try to open up the radius in those slow corners, you can't roll any more speed. The grip just isn't there. So certainly seems like the shortest way around it is kind of winning in that sector.
Dirksen a couple positions back from Velez in terms of the championship, but I believe it's about 40 points between them. Adam Chick just can't keep the car gripped up coming down through turn 3 and eventually finds his way back onto the track, but the damage has been done.
Joe, what I was just thinking about with this mixed weather and the incident point system and the clean driver, this race alone could definitely shake that up.
That's a good point. Yeah, if anybody makes it through this with zero incidents, they've earned that one this time around. As we saw overall in the standings for the clean driver, only 2, I think, right now still holds that underneath them, but we are still only one of the races of the 4 done for this round. So we'll see whether or not anybody is still that way come the end of next week. There's the gap now between Tong and Dirksen, up to about 1.1 seconds, it looks like.
Terrence is doing an excellent job in that pink 388 machine up there, just kind of setting the pace and not allowing these two to get any closer, close that gap. And actually Dirksen very, very wide through that final chicane, and now Schultz actually has to check up. So Tong extending the gap every single time this pair behind him starts to slip up and make those little mistakes or fight amongst themselves.
Yeah, I saw another little defensive move from Dirksen coming off the final turn, but then came back to the racing line, realizing he didn't need it. Now he's going to need it much better for Michael coming through turn 1, through Abbey, and then down into turn 3. This time the door's open. He's not going to think twice about it. He bangs into the side of Dirksen, but they both managed to stay pointing forward. He hasn't got the job done. He could try and cut back, but no, parking it on the apex. Dirksen will hold him behind. Velez is now much, much closer to the pair of them.
Excellent job from Dirksen right there to, like you say, park it at the apex of turn number 4. So it completely prevented the over-under from this driver of Michael Schultz. And I still think that Dirksen in sector 1, he's just so fast. He's got it figured out. And even when Michael Schultz was completely alongside, he couldn't get by him.
Derek, though, going a little wide in places. Looks like he's maybe shaken a bit by the contact. We'll hope that the car is still in a good state at this point. Look at them, very different lines coming down through Woodcut and down to the Cops once again.
But at this point, 1 lap ago, Tong, Terrence out there, he was only about 1.2, 1.5 seconds out front. Now look at that. The gap is doubled. Over 3 seconds now between first and second place.
Terrence has had speed so far this season, but he hasn't been showing it in the results. This is a very good opportunity for him because his best so far is a 5th place finish. A win will do him no harm.
This time it was Michael Schultz actually slipping up coming out of what is that Beckett's Chapel complex and kind of allows Derek Dirksen a little bit of breathing room. You see all 3 of these cars kind of equally separated as they go through this rolling turn number 15. See if anybody dares to touch those exit curbs. Dirksen certainly flirting with them, trying to pick up some speed.
doing what he can, because he definitely needs some distance now between himself and his rival as we check in on the battle for 7th there between Peter Sigourney and Ben Leung. Remember, I mentioned Ben is trying to catch up to Julian Velez as well. He's the next one down in the points, but he's certainly not going to really be able to gain much here if he stays all the way down in 8th while Velez sits in 4th.
Roll it through this sector 1, and this set of corners right here is where I thought the number 505 on top of the screen has been doing so well, just really taking that autocross line. And here we see Ben Leung kind of go through that same sector, rolling the corner a little bit more, and looks like good battles all around right now, only about 10 minutes into this thing.
So far, so good. We've had a few incidents, but no retirements thus far. In fact, let me check and see if anybody's even been. No, nobody's been down pit lane and try and take that spare car. So in spite of the damage, they're all trying to just work through it and get to their scheduled pit stop, which means we may see some early stoppers having to deal with that damage. I think Dirkson's lost a little bit of that ground again. Schultz getting closer once more, cuts it down to about 4/10.
Yeah, but crucially, Joe, I don't know if you saw that. Michael Schultz just hit the wall coming out onto that old front straightaway. He was really trying to tighten that corner and definitely smacked the passenger door on that concrete wall. Hopefully he doesn't have any damage on the front suspension from it.
Oof, yeah, not what you want to have happen at those speeds through that corner. Watching the cars weave back and forth now through Maggots, Beckett's, and Chapel. He usually can't pass through here, although a little bit of a look to the inside from Ben on Peter Sigourney. Peter trying to focus on the hanger straight, and that turns out to be the right call, because look at how far ahead he is now.
Just tuck up in whatever slipstream you can still find, and then hopefully you can see your brake marker through all of that rain haze there. Get the car slowed down, and like I said, turn 15 there, Stowe. You just roll as much speed as you possibly can, and then you really got to focus on the balance of the car through this slow final chicane complex. And it was actually Peter Sigourney a little bit wide, a little bit deep there into turn 16 brake zone. Allows Ben Leung to close it in just that little bit more.
Ben's not one that you probably want on the rear of the car. He's also a PCA instructor, and I imagine to do that, you probably need some patience. So it's going to be hard to try and get Ben flustered if you're Peter Sigourney. He's willing to sit there glued to that rear bumper.
Right now, he's call it just, oh, and there goes Peter Sigourney off the racing surface, just a little bit too deep on the brake zone. Leung's going to try to take advantage, but Peter's got the shorter distance around, and that has been prevailing in this area of the racetrack side by side through what is turn number 5. Leung keeps his foot and it gets loose, and now it's a drag race.
Sigourney's got a little bit better momentum and the inside coming up into Brooklands. Question is, can he make the defense stick as they almost make contact once again? Ben has to go way outside, and he slots back in line. Michael McKinney also back there in the pink and black car that you see in the screen. We've got a bit of a trio now.
Leung's going to have to exercise a little bit more of that patience that you were talking about from him. That was definitely frustrating, seeing your competitor essentially drive it off the racetrack directly in front of you, and then you were stuck on the outside, not able to get the pass done. So got to think of a new way.
Still very close to him. Now he's got another sort of tool in his toolbox there, having seen where there's maybe a few weaknesses for Peter Sigourney at this stage. Very different lines between them for the second lap in a row. Very interesting between them, especially since Peter's going so wide through that penultimate part of the S's.
I think he's just really trying to focus on the exit, and you see him kind of be able to extend the gap between himself and Ben. And it is important down the hanger straight. It is one of the highest speed sections. However, Stowe, it's not really a huge brake zone, but we are just glorified drag racers, Joe. The faster we get to each corner, the faster we go around the racetrack.
Exactly. I always loved the advice I got. It's easier to pass on the straightaways than it is in the corners. So just try and out-drag your competitor, and that's half the job done as we come back to Michael Schultz once again still chasing Dirksen, still has Velez behind them. The gap hasn't extended too much more between Tong and Dirksen. It's about 3.5 seconds between them. So he's at least minimized it now.
Dirksen once again wide in the brake zone and really, really shallow in turn number 4. This time it is Schultz as well as Velez able to kind of close it up. And ooh, you see maybe a wag of the tail too. That's one of the corners that you want to be careful of, that exit curb down there. If you start to abuse it and upset the platform, you can definitely have wheel spin as you accelerate through.
It's the second time in recent moments that we've seen someone go a little bit wide through there as well. Before this erupts, I do want to mention that we're thrilled to have Princess Cruises as the 2025 PCA title sponsor. As the official cruise vacation partner of Series 13, they provide exclusive offers, including world-leading itineraries across a fleet of 16 elegant ships, sailing to more than 330 global destinations. Reach out to the PCA concierge team to book your next adventure today by calling 833-679-2188. So still holding on to the back of the spray of P2 there. Schultz is trying to make a race of this. He knows he's got the speed. And if I'm honest, it seems like Michael does have the speed here. It's just, I don't think he's had the right time and right place to utilize it.
It's really tough to analyze, and we're still early on, right? We're only 15 minutes into this thing. 3.8 seconds. It can evaporate with one mistake. I do think that Schultz has kind of been pushing along Dirksen, but there also comes that anxiety factor of the competitor directly in your mirror. So what if Dirksen didn't have that car directly in the mirror? What if he was just able to focus on doing practice laps out there? Would he be able to close in that gap on Terrence? Or is Schultz's pace truly that much better? And Joe, right now, I'm going to agree with you. I do think if Michael can get by, he can kind of close that gap to the lead.
Robert Neville here, unfortunately, still in 23rd, has lost 9 positions from where he started. We saw him have a spin early on and hasn't been able to make up too many of the spots, although he's got a number of cars around him that could offer chances to try and get by. Back up to that battle for P2 once again as the black and white car with green rims that you see in the middle of your screen. That is Derek, that we've been kind of watching try to defend each and every step of the way in this race, and is doing quite good now. He's pulled up to nearly a second ahead of Schultz.
So the last lap from Dirksen was actually his fastest of the race, a 2:15.256, and you compare that to our leader, a 2:15.24. So that's directly on pace with that number 388 leading the race. Maybe Derek has turned off those mirrors in there and is just focusing straight out the visor, or the monitor, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. Derek does seem to be just handling it that little bit better now. He just glances that inside curve coming through Kopp's corner and continues to keep Michael Schultz at an arm's distance right now. Up ahead of him, Terrence Tong down to 2.6 seconds ahead of him. Did Terrence use up the best of his speed, or is Derek just really that much in the groove right now?
I can't express how difficult it is to hit your marks every single lap in these conditions. I know that, yes, in dry weather, the speeds are a little bit higher, but if you miss the brake zone when it's wet out, you're going to be sliding through the corner. You really don't have that ability to catch it. Same thing, if you roll onto the gas too soon, you're just going to get into this huge lazy slide where you're not driving the car forward anymore, and you need that forward traction to get that lap time. So, yeah, our leaders call it 2.5 seconds out in front, but one little mistake in these conditions, and it can all evaporate.
Tom will not want to be making any sort of mistakes like that, that is for sure. Because 2.5 seconds can definitely allow the other car through. Even without a full spin, just a little bit of an off track could do the trick. Let's check in on Sigourney and Leung here. Sigourney in the yellow and blue on your screen. Takes them down through Abbey Corner. He's not as much under threat as we saw before, so looks like Ben is maybe trying to size him up once again.
Maybe it just is taking a couple laps to kind of regain those positions. We didn't really say how tight qualifying was, but each one of these classes is always so compacted with the skill levels, and with those lap times, sometimes you get the competitors so on top of each other in that performance window that it can actually take a couple laps just to regain those tenths of a second out on track.
Yeah, last night, to add to your point, out of 28 starters, I think we had 22 finish on the lead lap, and that was with numerous incidents. So yeah, pace is very close out here in each of the classes they run in PCA. They do a fantastic job of matching everybody with equal competitors, which does make sometimes it very tricky if you don't have that track position. And I think Ben Leung is very much discovering that today. The good news for him is that they've left behind Michael McKinney, who was getting close a little bit earlier, so he's got less pressure from behind.
As we kind of watch them go through this fast S section here, Ben actually a little bit shallow through that section, just maybe trying to get a little bit better visual through the corners, and actually Peter missing that final apex. So this might be an opportunity for Ben Leung to kind of close it in that little bit more. What I was going to say here before that little bit of a missed apex is that Derek Dirkson's last 2 laps have been his fastest 2 laps of the race. And actually that last lap, the only car in the 2:14. So he's closing that gap to the lead.
You know, I mentioned that patience for Ben. I suppose you could say Peter probably has it too. You'd probably appreciate this. Apparently one of his hobbies is model aircraft, but it looks like there's a mistake there. Finds finally a little bit of a crack in the armor. Ben gets right on top of him. Does he have the speed, though, to do anything with it? No, he does not. Peter continues to run away again.
We've seen a lot of those mistakes into that turn 16 brake zone, but can also lead to moves coming up here in this next set of corners. Let's see if Ben will throw it down the inside. Peter actually very savvy, using up the whole racetrack from right to left, and then does a really nice job right there through what is turn 2 and 3. This is turn number 4, where you really got to slow down the car. I was seeing 37 miles an hour or so minimum rolling speed, almost like a school zone, Joe.
Yeah, it's got to feel like you are creeping. He's close once again. You can see the 222 car is going to cover off that inside line, just force him to have to do some sort of compromise to try and make any attempt at a pass, and he's not going to do it this time. We've had our first taker, by the way. Rex Jarawala has come in and taken his scheduled stop. It was a pretty standard time, about 14 seconds, and he did take his spare car to repair the damage.
This fight between Peter and Ben has brought in Michael McKinney into the fold as well. So what was 2 cars is now 3 cars. The job that Ben Leung had of just attacking out the windshield out front is now twofold. He's got to watch the mirror as well.
Yeah, Michael probably happy that he's been able to catch back up and get involved in this, but he's got double the spray in front of him as well. So he has even less to see and is very much trying to do this by just feeling his way around. And looking down at the battle for 11th, you've got Richard Woodruff and Sylvester Canny back here. Now, I'm not sure that we've seen Sylvester yet this season. I'll have to double check to see if he's had a start in Series 13.
He's that turquoise and blue number 14 chasing that white number 934, and actually Woodruff gets a little bit wide there through Stowe Corner, just allowing Canny to close it up that little bit more. And so the battle for 7th on top of the screen, still Peter Sigourney versus Ben Leung. And I gotta say that maybe the cars lining up behind Peter are a little bit faster. You see about 4.5 seconds in front of him is the gap.
Yeah, it seems like he's struggling. By the way, I checked, and this is the first race of Series 13 for Sylvester. Are we going to see an overtake from him? Oh, that is tough to try and pass through Abbey, and Woodruff's having none of it. Oh, Sigourney's off. Can he get the car slowed up and not run into anybody? Looks like he will, but this is going to be a massive loss for him.
And he's going to have, well, he's going to have a little bit of a slowdown penalty. Now he's back on the gas, so we'll have to see how this is all sorted out. Ben Leung still the inside of the racetrack, and there goes Michael McKinney off to driver's right. It was just a little bit of a balk coming off of turn number 5 there. And Joe, you're right. Somehow Peter Sigourney hasn't lost a spot.
He's clearly timed that extremely well. I'm kind of amazed, unless everybody behind him was slowing up, afraid that he would slide back onto the track, and gave up the time. Somehow, Peter Sigourney is creating his own little Truly train behind him. You mentioned McKinney in there. Woodruff Canny's now a part of it. Scott Bowers, this goes all the way back to 13th.
I love that. I think the only person to lose a spot through all that was actually Michael McKinney, who drove it off driver's right as he kind of got balked through it. So let's check out the replay. Sigourney out a little bit wide, and he's going to try to defend it. Oh, was there contact between Ben Leung to set that off? There was certainly secondary contact, and there's the big slide through and cutting the apex, but definitely some elbows out racing.
There was more to the story. So, again, curious if that will have the stewards looking at that since he was, this makes me wonder, was he given the place back? If that's what Ben was doing there.
I mean, it's tough, right? It certainly could be, but it kind of gets to be a little bit of a mixed review when you got all the cars stacking up behind you. So, I don't know. We'll see by the end of it.
Well,
now they're both wide.
Oh, they are indeed. And it is going to give up a spot for Ben Leung, which is, I was going to say, it's unraveled for him very quickly because he's also got a black flag for that contact in the end. So it didn't matter whether or not he was trying to give up that position. They were not happy with him. And that was the first penalty we've had in this entire race compared to the pros last night. This has been remarkably clean.
Nicely done keeping everything clean. Unfortunately, like you said, does have that black flag to serve. And I mean, look at the racing that it's created behind, though. What we were watching for 11th between Woodruff and Canny maybe a couple laps ago, it's actually caught up to the back end of these guys.
Just saw that Matson is also pitted. That one was a little bit long. And then Patrick Adamczyk is taking his service. So we got a couple other takers here just before the halfway mark. Coming around, and now McKinney gets another one off of Ben. He's not fighting it. He knows he's going to have to come in and serve a penalty regardless. Oh, what's happened to Rex Jarawala? Was that on his own again?
It certainly looked to be. He's not having necessarily the time of his life out here in the rain at Silverstone, but back out onto the racetrack he goes. That looks like it was through the S section, maybe getting loose through Beckett's over there.
Unfortunate, but he is running in last place, so, well, there's no positions to lose if you're him, but there's definitely time that he has given away in that one. Let's see, what have we got here in this group? Michael Schultz still sitting in third, but a lot farther back from Dirksen. Wow, 2.5 seconds. That's easily the largest gap we've seen between them in some time.
Dirksen has just proven us wrong here in the booth. I certainly thought that if Michael Schultz could get by that 5:05, he could close that gap up to our leader, but instead it is Dirksen kind of driving away from this number 97. And now I see that gap about 2 seconds. It was flirting with about 1.9, so Terrence Tong's days up front might be limited coming up on halfway.
Remember, this is an open setup series as well, so I wonder if Dirksen's car maybe set up a little bit for the end of the race and took a while to get to the temperatures that he wanted, as John Gibson may have had a disconnect, it looks like. He just kind of disappeared on our screen there for a brief moment, and I'm not sure how long it took for him to get back out on the track. Yeah, he's still disconnected, so that might be his day prematurely over, unfortunately.
This is Mark Foley here in the 316 car. It's got a nice little, I would say clean piece of racetrack, but it's very wet piece of racetrack that he's on. About 3.5 seconds behind Julian in the number 33 as we see the 917 of Scott Bowers exit pit lane here. Really, the top three have kind of spread out, call it 2.5 seconds apiece between each of those drivers.
Interesting. Oh, Gibson is back, but I did see that race control was talking to him there for a moment, so that may have been his warning about his connection. Usually they tend to try and pull drivers in that have too weak of a connection, as that proves a bit of a problem for everybody else around you. Might be something that more iRacers have to experience soon, because I don't know if you saw, Joey, they they're actually coming out with a poor connection flag to give to drivers now in the sim.
I did see that. Came out with that dev update that everybody's been talking about, and I'll be very curious to see how it works. I think in the spirit of it all, it's great, right? It's so frustrating when you've got somebody blinking out in front of you, or even if they're behind you, you just are unsure of where they're at. So I think it's definitely a step in the right direction from iRacing.
I agree. Yeah, made me happy to see, if I'm honest. 'Cause I think it'll definitely help out a number of people. David Glenn down here in P8 is not too far behind John Gibson. Well, he will be if John Gibson comes back. He's disappeared on us again, so that might be a black flag for John soon, as David gets promoted now up to 7th thanks to that.
I always love these shots here. Very jealous of a lot of the setups in there. I mean, I've got a nice rig over here, a nice 80/20 rig that I'm very proud of, but seeing all these cool monitors and really call it man cave setups, it's almost inspiring, if you will.
I would think that you wouldn't want a stormtrooper, though, as kind of your mascot in there. A character in fiction that is notorious for just missing everything. So if you want to hit your apexes, I wouldn't have the patron saint of non-aim ahead of me.
Well, you know, better to see the stormtrooper than take off the VR and Barney's there in race control.
That's true. Well, we're still following Glenn here back onto the Wellington Straight. He's ahead of Michael McKinney and Richard Woodruff. Now, did Glenn pass them recently? Was there a mistake? Because I don't remember him being ahead of those two.
You know, I will go back and double check. I do see that in terms of the top 10, he's our biggest mover of the day so far, up 4 positions from where he started back in 12th. So he's definitely on the move forward right now. That last lap time from David Glenn, a 2:17.0. Peter Sigourney directly in front of him, a 2:16.2. So maybe a little bit of a mistake from the 172. Maybe he'll get back on it here this lap.
Comat's rear tires have given up the ghost, and he's trying desperately to hold on to it. Does he stay straight? The 210 swinging around? The answer is going to be a no.
It looked pretty dang cool for most of it, though.
Yes, it did. Style points only count for so much, which is actually 0. So he's not going to be able to really pull much from that, unfortunately, as we check back in with Sigourney, and he is now well away from Ben Leon after Ben serving his penalty, but David Glenn has kind of replaced that role in the mirror and pulling along Michael McKinney once again. Peter just can't seem to get away from the pressure here today.
Sometimes that's how the race is, and if anything, I think it's Michael McKinney that is starting to maybe slip back just a little bit. He was kind of unfortunate there to have that off-track incident that was kind of in the middle of that momentum halt there for him, and I think it just kind of put him on the wrong set of tracks. He's been slipping back just that little bit, and now he's actually got Richard Woodruff, that white car, directly behind him, so we'll see if he can kind of pick up the pace again.
Far enough apart that we've got an opportunity that we want to mention Princess Cruises, because they're the 2025 PCA title sponsor. As the official cruise vacation partner of Series 13, they provide exclusive offers, including world-leading itineraries across a fleet of 16 elegant ships sailing to more than 330 global destinations. Reach out to the PCA concierge team to book your next adventure today by calling 833-679-2188. I did notice on our timing and scoring, we got a lot more drivers that have pitted now. Bowers, Canny, Cottle, Coomer, Dale Green, Chris Sherburne have all taken scheduled stops, although Sylvester Canny was in for 22 seconds, so that was almost 50% longer than most of the standard stops.
I think the easiest strategy of a 1-hour race is go smack in the middle, right? 30 minutes down, come down pit lane, get that stop done, and get back out there on the racetrack. But yeah, to your point, that number 14 car definitely a little bit longer on pit road, lost a few positions, or I expect they'll lose positions from it once the cycles are complete.
Yeah, most likely is behind Scott Bowers, who also had his stop, so lost at least that one already, and probably a few others going to be emerging just ahead. This is McKinney here in the pink and black 927 that we've been watching, currently running in 9th place. He's also still owes us a pit stop. And since he's just at about where he started, curious if he's going to lose any on this one. Patrick Adamczyk. Oh, Rexy's going to get a little bit messed up. And unfortunately, just absolutely noses right into the Armco.
Gonna need some braces after that one. I think they can get it fixed up, though. The curbs are dangerous out there. We've seen a few of the cars definitely kind of flirt with driving over those exit curbs. Some of them are getting away with it. Some of them are having those snap oversteer issues. And I think whenever you see rain and you see a different surface other than, call it the pavement racing surface, you got to kind of tiptoe around it. You're never sure of the grip level it's going to give you.
Indeed. And it seems like these drivers have been dealing with it pretty decently. We've seen a few spins here and there, but it's been mostly minor. Just a few drivers that have wound up finding the wall due to their offs, but there's still 25 minutes left to go. So anything could happen from here. And no doubt by the end of the race, those tires will not have as much tread. So I'm sure we'll be dealing with the water a little bit less effectively.
David Glenn was a little bit wide there through that complex of turns 6 and 7, so it allowed Michael McKinney to close it up. Remember, I was saying that this black and pink 527 might have been slipping back a little. I also wonder if he picked up any damage from going off track in that earlier incident that could kind of be hampering his pace. But right now he's got 172 directly in front of him, maybe off the racing line a little bit. Maybe can kind of dangle that carrot out in front of Michael, get him back up there.
Should see some of the drivers pitting in soon. Remember, they have a much wider window thanks to the rain slowing down the pace of these cars. So they should be able to go pretty far into this one. Question is who does want to try and stretch it deep into it, and who's going to risk maybe pitting a little bit early to see if they can get some clear air and some clean racetrack in front of them.
As we've been watching this battle, it's been very, very quiet at the front. But remember how we were saying it was about 2.5 seconds between each of our front runners? Well, almost half that, only about 1.5 seconds between first and second, and about 1.2 seconds between second and third. So those gaps are starting to condense.
Massively impressed with Dirksen, considering it looked like he was just under such pressure at the start of the race. And is even, I believe, was he one of the ones we saw have a little bit of contact early? Because, I mean, the way that he has just rebounded is really almost night and day from what we saw earlier.
Him and Terrence had that great battle through that opening set of corners, and really ever since Tong got out front, he's kind of set sail and never looked back. However, you're right, Derek Dirksen has just kind of been on that slow choo-choo train. Took him a little while to kind of get wound up, but ever since, call it maybe halfway through the race, 35 minutes to go or so, he's definitely picked up the pace.
It's pretty strong right now as we watch the onboard with Michael Schultz here, very focused on what he's doing out on the track. We'll take a little bit of the exit curb coming through Cops, no problem for him this time around, and then thread the needle down through Maggots and into Beckett's.
Actually got a little bit of that apex curb there through what was for 11, kind of set him maybe half a car width off of the optimum racing line. So didn't lose too much time, still down to about 1.1 seconds between himself and Derek Dirksen. So I think as soon as Derek cuts the time out of Terrence, well, Michael's doing the same thing to Derek. So it really is just kind of that slinky effect, that accordion that's compressing.
Boy, it'll be fascinating if we get all three meeting one another for a battle for the lead at the end of this race. Of course, the pit stops might have something to say about that. That was way too deep from Michael. He gets the car slowed up, but there goes some of the time he had just caught.
Yeah, it cost him about 1/4 of a second there. So just a little bit wide into a brake zone as we watch Peter Coomer here in the 333. Same set of corners, and then a little bit kind of in the way there. Thankfully, no contact between himself and other competitors.
Glad to see everybody was pretty heads up in that one. Oh, Komats looks like he's heading for the barrier, and he does smack it relatively hard. Steve has had a really rough start to this race, unfortunately.
I think maybe picked up a little bit of damage as well from that heavy impact on driver's right-hand side. So this blue and yellow car is the 222 of Peter Sigourney. I kind of refer to it as the immovable rock, right? Ever since anybody comes up on this back wing, nobody's really able to get by this 222.
No, not yet, at least. Seems to be pretty comfortable running like this. He's also raced karts in his lifetime, so I wonder if that's helped as well, having to try and really feel that grip underneath him and deal with that as it comes. As we see a little bit of side-by-side battle between Woodruff and Neville after Woodruff exits from the pit lane, and he's going to come out ahead of Robert, who is actually not pitted yet, so his battle isn't really with Robert. He kind of needs to just carry on.
To your point, so it's crucial for Woodruff to kind of clear that competitor in that couple set of corners as soon as he left pit lane. If you're faster than the car, remember, you don't want to get held up, especially on that outlap. So nice job from the 934 to get by Neville.
Great stuff. Now we're starting to see a few more trickle into pit lane here and there. Back to David Glenn and the 172, just about 3/4 of a second ahead of Michael McKinney, and sporting a sort of alternate plaid scheme to what we're used to seeing on these Porsches.
Yeah, it's not the red and silver, but more, is it more of a flannel, Joe? Would it be green and black, more flannel?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, I probably
not necessarily
should call
plaid.
It yeah.
Well, look at this. Terrence Tong, our leader, 388 on pit road. So the top three, the pit stop cycles have begun.
All right, so we're looking for about 13 to 14 seconds if he wants a decent stop. Some drivers have been able to get away with a little bit less. I'm watching to see 12, 13 and a half. So yeah, he's pretty much spot on the money. And if I'm seeing right, he has tons of clear track around him. So I don't know if he was watching a track map, but Terrence has called this to perfection.
And crucially, I think that Dirksen just had an issue in Sector 1. I'm looking at kind of his relative, and he's over half a second off pace right now. So if Terrence Tong is able to, like you said, get out and clean racetrack right now and just focus forward, he might be able to hang on to the lead.
A little bit of a battle once again here between Schultz and Dirksen, coming up to Kopp's corner and just making sure to fill those mirrors. He's a lot closer than what we've seen in recent laps, but this is not unfamiliar for Derek because he had to fight him pretty hard a little bit earlier on, showing himself, or maybe just trying to get some visibility coming down into the S's.
Derek was extremely loose coming out of turn number 9 that lap. Let's see how he exits Beckett's and Chapel here out onto the hangar straight. And once again, you see the back end of the car really have a lot of movement. Here comes Michael Schultz using the slipstream.
He's got a great opportunity. Does he go for it? Big defense from Derek coming down to the braking of Stowe corner. And will stay slightly to the inside, just preventing Michael from being able to get side by side through there. Will either of them decide to take a pit stop? Both of them will.
This is going to be crucial right here. Who can get on the brakes? And no contact between the two. You got to hope that Dirksen doesn't get a slowdown penalty from speeding entering pit lane there from that bump.
Don't see a black flag next to either of them on our timing, so I think he should be okay. Got a couple drivers that are able to go farther. John Gibson, Mark Foley, both able to carry on, it looks like. But Velez also joined Dirksen, Schultz in pit lane. But we have to watch to see where Terrence Tong will be when they emerge. It hasn't been too many laps, so I doubt they'll be able to undercut him. There he is now.
And crucially, look at the stop from Michael Schultz as Terrence Tong drives by. He'll resume the lead as they all exit pit lane. But Michael Schultz with a long stop, I think he took 4 tires and it cost him.
Oh, And now he's got to get them up to temperature. There's the contact. Didn't look too bad from that one. It certainly looked a lot worse from what we were seeing initially. And Schultz did take his free repair from that. So if he has an accident, unfortunately, he doesn't have a safety net from here on out.
So this pit stop, Michael Schultz lost a ton of ground. Julian Velez here in the 33 car actually got by him. He's directly in front of Peter Sigourney in this blue and yellow car. But remember, that 222 still has to hit pit lane.
Yeah, so we're waiting on that car, Mark Foley, John Gibson. We still need David Glenn, Michael McKinney, David Snelling, Ken Eskridge, and Robert Neville. They all need to come in, take fuel. They are not required to take tires, although as you saw, they are allowed to, but I don't think it would be wise in today's race to try and do so, considering how much of a loss it is down on pit lane. Meanwhile, Velez looks like he's going to get promoted up into what should be third once these pit stops are over.
I think kind of the dark horse of the race, if you will. He's been very, very quiet, sitting in fourth and fifth behind the majority of the battles. And during that pit stop, timed that strategy to perfection. And now he's just got to hang on for another 14 minutes. And like you said, might end up with the podium.
Foley and Gibson both head in, so that'll hand the lead officially back over to Terrence Tong, who still remains about a second and a half ahead. Oh no, more problems for Ben Leung. The 290 looking like he's the latest victim, I think, of Club Corner at the end of the lap.
Just that mixed weather definitely catching drivers out. And here you see the remaining cars hitting pit lane. So not sure if anybody's going to be able to stretch it further than this. The 316 of Mark Foley relinquishes the lead.
I think we did. Yeah, we had Peter Sigourney carry on for another lap. So there's a few drivers really making good fuel out here. Let me see. Snelling is coming in. Eskridge goes on for another lap. And what about Neville here? Neville is heading in. So yeah, about three cars able to go, or excuse me, no, two cars able to go one extra lap over everybody else.
Here is that 087 of Robert Neville hitting pit lane. And I just kind of want to point something out. It's about 1.5 seconds. It shows 1.8 seconds between Tong and Dirksen right now, first and second place. But remember how slow that in-lap was from Derek. He was fighting with Michael Schultz that entire time. So he had a slow in-lap. He was faster on pit lane than Terrence Tong, and he's still only 1.5 seconds back. I think it might have been a missed opportunity for Derek.
Yeah, it definitely seems like he could have maybe pushed and tried to get a little bit closer for an undercut, but it just was not meant to be. With the last two of our cars, I would think, coming in pretty soon. Real quick, I do want to give a mention to our sponsor one last time, because Princess Cruises is the 2025 PCA title sponsor. As the official cruise vacation partner of Series 13, they provide exclusive offers, including world-leading itineraries across a fleet of 16 elegant ships, sailing to more than 330 global destinations. Reach out to the PCA concierge team to book your next adventure today by calling 833-679-2188. Into the quarter quarter of this race now. And we should have a sense of where everybody winds up once we're done with this, although Richard Woodruff winds up on a bit of track that's not really track. They're coming out of Club Corner.
Thankfully was able to correct the car from the slide before he got into that wall there. So trundles right along and actually kind of gets to the inside of the car there before that next corner. Here comes Peter Sigourney, one of two cars yet to hit pit road, so he'll drop out of the top five. Nice job stretching it nearly 50 minutes, though.
So here's the question. What's it going to look like between him and David Glenn? I believe Glenn was the one that was behind him at that stage. He's had a couple cars that had gotten close to the back of him over the course of this race. Tong on your screen, about 2 seconds up. There's Glenn right now. Sigourney is exiting, and it looks like, yeah, Sigourney's got him easily. He is back in seventh.
Nicely done from Peter Sigourney, and crucially, David Glenn had actually just gotten by Michael McKinney that previous lap, so maybe just those two Porsches there kind of going side by side held him up that little bit, allowed Peter Sigourney to kind of slip through, but he's 6 seconds up the road. Nicely executed.
Yeah, very great job on the stop, quicker and more efficient, and as well seems to have been quick during the off laps between them. By the way, we still have one more car that has not pitted. Ken Eskridge decided he's got enough fuel to keep going once again. This has been amazing out of the 77 car, but he sits in the top 10. I imagine we're going to see him drop down well outside of that pretty soon.
And here he is. We were just covering that battle between David Glenn and Michael McKinney, and here is that 77 of Ken Eskridge. Probably another half a lap before we see this machine hit pit lane. I don't think I would stretch it too much further. You know, by the time you serve your 15 seconds, 20 seconds, it's going to drop you down pretty far anyways.
Exactly. That said, I mean, he should theoretically have a little bit less to refuel compared to some of the others, both being a little bit more accurate with these final few laps and then also just being able to stretch it as far as he had this time. Back to Glenn versus now McKinney. David having to switch gears and go on the defense. The 527 trying to at least go up one from where he started, because right now he's back to exactly where he gridded.
And it was just a mistake out of that black and pink car of Michael McKinney a couple laps ago that allowed David Glenn in that green flannel machine to get by. So I wonder if Michael maybe can kind of get back on the right set of railroad tracks here. You know, there is still 9 minutes left. There's still a lot of racing. There's still plenty of opportunity for others to make mistakes. So sometimes you do just need to kind of wiggle the fingers, wiggle the toes, and give yourself a mental reset and go back out there and start attacking again.
See if he's got the wherewithal to do so. But if you, our eagle-eyed viewers may have looked behind them, noticed that's still Ken Eskridge back there. He's carrying on for a 23rd lap in this race. Unless everybody else just pitted way earlier than what was possible, I'm kind of amazed that Ken has been this fuel efficient. And to his credit, he has usually been the one to go the longest of most in each of the races so far. But this is kind of a step above and beyond.
He is losing a little bit of time, though. I'm looking at the lap times. Ken's last lap, a 2:17.3. Compare that to our leader, a 2:14.8. So you can definitely fuel save if you're off the pace just that little bit more. And Ken is kind of showing that. You can stretch it really, really far, hang out in the top 10. But how much are you going to give up in the long run? A nice strategy on the front half of the race, though. You never know what's going to happen, and sometimes you got to roll the dice.
Exactly. So could come out with a good one here. In fact, again, maybe he's just been saving this entire time and we didn't know it. And he is trying to stop this thing. We were kind of debating last night, because we didn't know what the fuel mileage really would look like in the rain. And kind of like we said, most of the drivers pitted what we saw around today. And now this makes me curious of what truly is possible out there if everybody was trying to save, as we continue to follow David Glenn ahead of Michael McKinney. That looks to have stretched a bit, and McKinney now about 1.2 seconds back.
I think at Silverstone, talking about that fuel burn situation that you were just mentioning, this is such a big racetrack, and the majority of it is that medium to high speed. Yeah, the mixed weather is definitely going to throw the fuel number for a loop, but I don't think you're going to be able to save with how much 100% throttle time you got. David Glenn a little bit wide there through that final chicane sector, but thankfully doesn't lose too much time. And just as we were mentioning fuel, looks like Ken Eskridge is finally hitting pit lane.
All right, he's only going to have to do like 3 laps, because remember, it's 2 minutes per lap there, so he made it pretty darn far. But yeah, David Glenn now giving a little bit of hope to Michael McKinney. He's going to have to try and use those tiny mistakes to stick with that green and black machine. The Ox karaoke box on his car, the 172. Hopefully we'll be singing praises by the end rather than a song of woe.
And since we've been talking about the fuel burn situation so much and Ken Eskridge, it did work out for him, right? He started way back there. He's actually gained 5 positions through that really, really long fuel save strategy. So nice job from the 77.
And hopefully with him only needing those these couple laps worth, he can just basically push flat out from here. I mean, for example, remember I said it was 12 to 13 seconds for most drivers. Well, it was 8.4 seconds stationary for Ken Eskridge. He is a real twinkle toes on his right foot.
Unfortunately, I think actually he's got him stacking up directly behind him, so he's going to have to put the all-out pace to test right now as we still watch David Glenn out here on the racetrack, still being chased by Michael McKinney through this, what is turn 12, 13, 14. Stand on the gas and accelerate your way down the hangar straight.
These long shots always give that false impression that 527 is so much closer, but yeah, he's not nearly close enough to try and attack coming down into Stowe this time. He's going to have to really get on top of that soon if he wants to attack and try and take this spot. As we glance back in on 15th with Ken Eskridge, as you said, really leading the train. Snelling's behind him. J.R. Gregory is in there. Mike Matson, and it looks like you can count Chris Sherburne as part of this as well. So definitely a few that have been showing up in his mirrors. But what's this pace going to look like in the final few laps as they come down to the braking of the penultimate turn here? Definitely far enough away from Snelling, he can't do anything. And he doesn't have to hold him off all that long. Look at this. We got maybe 2 laps to go or so.
It should be about that. Remember, the leader is going to be, call it half a lap in front of this battle that we're watching here is Terrence Tong. In fact, coming down what is one of these straightaways here. He's only got about 1 second between himself and Derek Dirksen. So maybe that gap that was inflated a little bit from the strategy is now starting to shrink down again. Derek Dirksen is definitely keeping him honest.
And other than that 5th place finish, it really has not gone well, honestly, for earlier in the season. And just double checking to see where his other finishes were, because he scored 50 and 140 in the first 2 rounds. So he was a 17th place and a 26th place. So yeah, this is a massive swing from how things started for him.
He's going to have to hang on to it. I would say 2 more laps here, Joe, because he's going through turn 15 right here. Just another set of corners, and he's going to cross the start-finish line about 3 minutes remaining. So yeah, it should be 2 laps to go.
Indeed. Dirksen has done the hard work, but it's one thing to catch. It's another thing to pass. And honestly, I don't think we could truly say he's caught yet. He's still got to get a little closer to try and make that work. P5 between Foley and Gibson here. Haven't really talked about John Gibson other than his connection issues a little bit early on. I did hear from race control that they were watching it, but they haven't handed out any penalties, so he's gotten very lucky that it's been so intermittent that they haven't decided to penalize him for it. And he might be rewarded with a top 5 if he can just get by the 316.
Kind of presenting the car down the front straightaway there, just trying to get in the head of his competitor, Mark Foley, there with the white car and red highlights. Sometimes all you need is just that racing line to open up that little bit. And here's a battle. Mike Matson and Chris Sherburne going into that final chicane sector. And actually one of the cars directly behind spinning out. I think that was Robert Neville as Chris Sherburne was making this pass.
Not the first spin we've seen from Neville. It's been a rough one, but let's stick with this battle. This has been fun to watch. These last couple laps coming down into the first corner, close on his rival, but Cottle, or excuse me, no, we're watching, Cottle and Neville here instead of those in front of them. So this is Robert trying to make up for his mistake. Just a couple corners to go, and as close as he gets into the braking, it wasn't close enough.
Cottle taking that shallow line, but he's got wide there, trying to accelerate away as Dirksen is now closing the gap. So I was watching that battle between Cottle and Neville, and they swapped around, and looks like our leaders are coming to the white flag here in a few corners.
And Schultz is pushing. In the background, we saw him go 4 wheels into the wet grass and got away with it, but that definitely did not help him trying to make a podium with Julian Velez, the next car up in front of him. In fact, Velez, I mean, depending on what kind of lap Dirksen has here as we take the white flag, he could be a serious threat for P2.
I think that Julian is probably the savior to Terrence Tong, because if he can go up there and pressure Dirksen, there's that off from Michael Schultz you were mentioning going out onto that hanger straight. Definitely got away with one, but kind of what I was saying, if Julian can pressure Derek, it might take that distraction away from chasing down the lead.
Exactly. Tong probably Julian's biggest cheerleader right now, urging him to try and catch up to that 5:05, give him some breathing room as we get towards the end of this race. There you can see still not so much in the way of lap traffic. In fact, I think every single car is on the lead lap here, and we're not close to getting lap traffic. So this is an amazing race. I know it's a long lap, but wow, that's really good pace from everybody.
And everybody's still running, right? No retirements. And yeah, great to see in mixed weather conditions. It kind of spreads out, but 2 minute plus on the lap time and everybody on that lead lap, like you were saying.
Well done from all involved. Real testament to everybody trying to never give up on this one, especially since we did see a few have some pretty big hits out there, but they've taken that spare car and they'll get back running. Velez still behind Dirksen, still about the same distance back. It's going to need to be a lot closer, and really Stowe and Vale are the only realistic shots from here on out.
Some kind of run he can get through this corner exit, actually pretty dead even with Dirksen, so Derek did exactly what he needed to do, just kind of keep Julian about a 10 car length distance here. Julian presenting the car, driver's right, just trying to throw Derek off of the game, whatever he can do to try to alter that racing line in front of him.
Not taking the bait. Derek holding that racing line as the car in front of him, Terrence Tong, looked to be the quickest early, started to fade a little bit, but whether or not he was managing the gap or if he was legitimately being caught, it doesn't matter, because what that number is that you finish at is what he cares about, and that is P1 for Terrence Tong here at Silverstone.
Perfectly executed on that start to get that lead away from the 5:05, and ever since he had clean racetrack, he set sail. Perfect race from Terrence Tong.
Magnificent. His first podium is his first win of Series 13. Close call for Mark Foley as John Gibson hassled him all the way to the line for that top 5. And as for Peter Sigourney versus David Glenn, well, Sigourney did a great job in his pit stops and then in the final stint as well to get that 7th place. The Fuelmeister, Ken Eskridge, well, he's getting close to coming around for a 15th place finish. And honestly, David Snelling really was not much of a problem for him here at the end.
Ken did a great job to get up to pace once he exited pit lane after that very, very late pit stop. And yeah, started back in 20th, used the strategy, used the fuel game. He's going to go up 5 positions, and this was another good battle. Chris Sherburne definitely made his way through the field late in the race to gain 7 himself.
Looks like all 25 cars are going to be finishing within about a minute 36, although I just saw Rex Jarawala get a black flag, and that may have been for incidents. I'm not sure. That was a bit strange out there. We'll try and track down what exactly he got a penalty for. In the meantime, Terrence Tong is your winner. It's by about a 1.5 seconds over Derek Dirksen, making sure to hold him far enough back that he was never truly under threat. Julian Velez was P3 as Michael Schultz fought hard to get onto that podium, but just things did not seem to go his way. Mark Foley was 5th and John Gibson P6. Then you've got Peter Sigourney in 7th, David Glenn in 8th, and Michael McKinney in 9th. Richard Woodruff rounds out your top 10.
11th, we have Sylvester Canny. That little bit of a long stop definitely cost the 14 some positions. Ben Leung, after that contact, drops back to 12th place after the penalty. Scott Bowers finishing in 13th, with Dale Green finishing 14th. Nice job for this next series of drivers, including Dale, went up +5. Ken Eskridge +5 to 15th. David Snelling +6 to 16th. J.R. Gregory in 17th. Chris Sherburne 18th. Mike Matson 19th, and Robert Neville in 20th.
21st goes to Cottle with Jarawala 22nd here, but it does look like it may have been incident points, and he was pushed down to 25th on our timing, so I'm not sure if he'll be able to keep that 22nd. Coomer was 23rd, Komats 24th, and then 25th was Adam Chick in the end. Looks like we've got Terrence Tong ready to talk to us. Man, what a difference from the start of the season it has been for Terrence. Not just moving up to a top 5 last time, but now coming away with a win. Terrence, my goodness, what a performance out in the rain today.
Yeah, it was a tough race with the rain.
It looked tough, and it didn't look as tough at the start, though. You were pulling away, and you put a decent distance between yourself and Derek. Then suddenly later in the race, it seemed like he was kind of reeling you in. Were you just kind of running your own pace, or was he actually catching up to you?
I think there's a combination of both. It's a very tough track to stay focused, and throughout the race, I just had too many minor mistakes here and there, so I was losing my advantage.
Well, I mean, holding on to the momentum is going to be important, not just in the race itself, but over the course of Series 13. You had a rough start in the first 2. Now that you've really rebounded with a top 5 and a win, do you think you can kind of keep this up for the last few rounds?
Hopefully I can do that.
Well, we look forward to seeing if you've got the pace to do so. Is there anybody you want to thank for your first Series 13 win?
Yeah, so first of all, I would like to thank you, PCA. Thank you, the sponsor, Princess Cruise, and all my buddies at the Upper Canada region. We had a good race tonight.
Indeed, we did. Terrence Tong, coming home with the win, was ahead of Derek Dirksen, who finished in P2. I believe Joey has caught up with him.
Yeah, Derek Dirksen, first of all, congratulations on the podium. Nicely done.
Yeah, thanks very much, guys.
So it all came down to the start, right? You put it on pole position, but it was side by side between you and Terrence, and maybe was it just a little bit wide through turn number 4? Think it caught you out?
Yeah, I didn't get off to the best start, nerves or what have you, but Terrence managed to get the lead, and then I had to play quite a bit of defense from that point forward with Michael, so that cost some time, but I managed to keep it together.
What was that difference kind of between the first half and the second half of the race? Like you said, you were kind of playing defense the first half, but then it seemed to kind of close the gap the second half.
I think it's just a little seat time. I haven't driven this track until last night, so it's just coming together for me.
Well, nicely done on the podium. Another second place here for you. Is there anybody you want to give a shout out to?
Shout out to the sponsors, Princess Cruises, PCA, UCR, our local guys, and of course the whole sim racing team, and you guys. Great job.
That was the driver of the 505, Derek Dirksen, coming home in second place today.
And he was followed home by Julian Velez. Let's have a chat with him because, importantly, I believe this means that Julian should be leading the points after this race. Julian, congratulations on the podium. You looked tantalizingly close at times to getting involved with that battle.
Oh yeah, that was interesting to watch up front for sure, and I was just trying to stick on them and do the best I could and keep it clean.
Well, you had a stop that was kind of close to Derek's time and Tong's time as well. Were you hopeful that the pit stops would give you any sort of advantage? We were kind of waiting to see if anyone would do something tricky, and we were surprised that Tong was the first to blink.
Yeah, I was surprised to see him come in too. Maybe he was losing some tires in the rear or something, and he decided to pit a lap early. And I honestly was going to stay out one more lap when I saw the guys pull in. I was like, you know what, let me get in behind them, and you know, we were catching up to each other, and I decided maybe it's a good time to go in. And I don't know what happened to Michael in the pits, but I ended up jumping him in there, and I got super lucky coming out where we had a lap car come in between us, and I think he gave me just the right amount of buffer, because Michael was definitely coming up on me in the last few laps.
It can get exciting, certainly, as you start to feed back out. But I'm sure it's also exciting knowing that, if by my calculations, you should be leading the points after race number 3. Does that change anything for you? And is there anybody up here at the top that you're kind of eyeing, thinking they may be a rival with you down the line?
Yeah, you know, it's a shame that Jenks isn't here, and I really wanted to battle it out with him this season. But yeah, I'm grateful that I'm keeping it clean, and it's getting me up in first place right now. And I know Tong, he's got pace. He's had pace on every track, and you know, I'm glad to see him finishing up top tonight. And yeah, I think these guys that finish top 5, 6 with me are definitely going to give me a run for my money and keep me on my toes for the rest of the season.
Well, we'll see if you can step up to them and maybe potentially take your first win of Series 13 a little later on. But again, congratulations for the champagne today.
Thank you very much, guys, and thank you to PCA.
That was Julian Velez coming home in P3. So with that, we are going to close things out by reminding you that next time out, we're going to Road America, and that will be March 6th, 2 weeks from now, once again at 9 p.m. Eastern. But we are not done with our Racing in the Rain. We're going to be back at Silverstone Wednesday night, about 6 days from now, February 26th, for the sport class here on PCA. That'll be at Silverstone once again. And a big thank you goes to the steering committee at the PCA Sim Racing, as well as to our team tonight, Ramiro and Joey. Also, thanks for watching tonight's broadcast at PCA Sim Racing. I'm Joe Peak, and until next time, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.